In this video we're going to learn a little bit about something called arrays, which is a different way of storing data. And in order to illustrate the use of arrays, I'm just going to show you this dreadful program here which is printing out all the numbers from 1 to 10. It looks horribly inefficient, so let's run the program. And here we go, here's my output, all the numbers from 1 to 10. So various different improvements we can make to this. I mean, obviously that takes a long time to type. We can speed things up. If I want to type print, there's a little shortcut. If I just type a question mark and then 11, that recognizes the question mark as being the print and changes it to print. So that makes things a little bit quicker, but it's still a very inefficient way of working. So you'll remember from previous videos that we can use the for next loops. So for I equals 1 to 10, we can print out the value of I. It looks a bit more efficient in terms of coding. So let's press F5 and run that. There we go, got the same effect on output. Well, look, here's another slight variation on a theme. I've only gone up to 5 this time, but if I assign those numbers into variables, into numeric variables, the letters A through to E, and then I can print them out, A through to E, which will be the numbers that are stored in those variables rather than actually the letters A to E being printed out. It does mean that I can use these letters later on. So for instance, if down here I then said let A equal A plus 1, and then I said print A, when I run that program I'm going to get A is 1, so I'm going to get the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 printed out. It then adds 1 to A, so A becomes 2, and it's going to print out the number 2. So let's have a little quick little look at that in action. Here we go, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2. So in terms of just basically printing out numbers 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, this isn't really any better than the previous method, but the advantage of this is that I can now use these numbers later on in the program. So let's just imagine that that 1 represents the number of A's that were in my coded message, and the number 2 represents the number of B's that were in there, and so on and so on and so on. You can see that I could be looking through the message and counting up and adding to those totals in a loop, and then I could print out the totals at the end of my loop. Well, I'm going to look at another way of storing numbers in variables and using them in loops, and they're called arrays. So the dim command is short for dimension, and it dimensions an array of variables. It's in this case it's setting up 10 variables called num1, num2, num3, num4, all the way up to num10. Well, actually it's putting a free one in there as well, num0, but let's not worry about that for now. So it's effectively setting up 10 variables in one go. And what we can do is we can just loop through for I is 1 to 10, and for each number variable we can put the corresponding number in there, we can print it out. So let's just run that, and what we can see here is it's put the numbers 1 to 10 inside those variables. Let's just change this slightly, so if I call that 3 times I, so now instead of putting the numbers 1 to 10 in there, num1 would actually be 3 times 1 would be 3, num2 is 3 times 2, which would be 6. I'm putting the 3 times table in here. So let's see what happens if I do that, and here we go, we get the numbers 3, 6, 9, 12, and so on and so on. Okay, so far you might be looking at all this array business and saying, well, that's all well and good, but I can't actually see a very good use for it. Well, let's sort of give you a bit of a hint as to how you might use it. So in this particular bit of code here, I've dimensioned an array called letter counts 26. Now they're going to count the letters A, B, C, D, E, F, and so on. So how many of each letter has this message got in it? So I'm going to write some code to do that kind of analysis. So really, initially we go through the loop from 1 to 26. Let's set all the letter counts to 0 to start off with, and then at the end of the program we can print off all the letter counts again and see if they've changed. Obviously I haven't added the code yet to actually do that. So let's run the program, and to start off with, all those letter counts are 0. Well, I've added another couple of lines here. I've also noticed I put these little single quotes at the beginning of these lines, which has commented them out. Because this was giving me a great big list of 26 zeros at the end of my program, it was obliterating everything else that was printing out beforehand. So I've used this len function, len brackets, and then what goes in the brackets is the name of the variable. So it's what it's going to do, the len command, is it's going to count how many characters there are in that message. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 characters in there. Hopefully this is going to count them up for me and print out how many letters are in the message. Let's run that and see what happens. Here we go, it's printed out the number 14, so that's worked. And I'm going to use that then to drive a little loop so I can count through one character at a time and count up whether I've got A's, B's, C's and so on. So first of all I'll put in a few rem statements just to tell me what each section of the code is doing. That's always a good plan. But the most important change is in here. So I've worked out the length of the messages we just saw. I'm using that to control a loop to go through one character by one character through the message. So this mid dollar function looks at the message dollar variable that we set up at the beginning of the program. It looks at position I, so where I is counting through one character at a time. So first we're going to look at the first character, then we're going to look at the second character, then we're going to look at the third character, and for a length of 1. So the I is controlling whereabouts in the message we start looking, and the 1 is controlling the length of that part of the message that we're looking at, in this case just one character at a time. So if I run this program now, we know that we had 14 characters in there, and you can see that one line at a time it's picking off one character and then printing that out in turn. Now I could do some analysis in this loop to count up how many of each letter we have in the message. Right, now I don't recommend this as a method. This is a horribly inefficient way of doing it, and I don't really want to give the game away about how I actually want you to do this at this stage, but just to give you an idea of what you could do with these counts. Now we know what we've managed to get hold of a letter from the message. If that letter is the letter A, then we can update the letter count of for letter A by adding 1 to it. If that letter was a B, then we could update the letter count for letter B by adding 1 to it, and so on and so on. So if we look back at the message, it said I am a message, there are 1, 2, 3 A's in it. So when we go through this little loop and we pop out the end, if we printed out the letter counts, I should have a letter count of 3 for the letter A. So let me just delete the rem characters for those, and now when I run the program, I'm only going to count for A, B and C, so letter counts for A, B and C. When I run the program, that first count for number 1 should be 3. So let's run the program and see. Here we go, there was the 14 for the message length, there was the message character by character, there's the count for A, there's the count for B, there's the count for C. So we can use that very usefully in our analysis.